Welcome to Pastoring on Purpose, the official podcast of the Center for Ministerial Care, coming to you live from the floor of the 2026 Church of God International General Assembly in beautiful Orlando, Florida.
Welcome to another episode of Pastoring on Purpose here in the exhibit hall in Orlando, Florida. I am with our producer, Ryan, as well as the wonderful, great Dr. Jeff Sargent. Good to see you, man. How you doing?
Having a good time here at the General Assembly and really enjoying meeting some of these wonderful guests that we've already had on today, and hope that those who are tuning in will enjoy it as well. So actually really looking forward to this episode, in particular because of the topic and the guest.
We have Giovy Sanders with us today. We just got done speaking with your husband, Dennis Sanders, which was a phenomenal episode himself, and talked a little bit about the marriage, but I want to kind of dive right into the work that you have been able to do with your dissertation, receiving your doctorate. What kind of led up to you wanting to write what you wrote, and what was it that you did write on?
What led to the topic at hand was we both married at the age of 45, so we both brought in a lot of stuff into our marriage. Things happened within the first couple of weeks and several months of our marriage that put the marriage into overdrive. So I'm previous military. I have some minor PTSD things that I deal with, so I had been to counseling already before. I worked as an interpreter for 20 years. I was in law enforcement. Prior to meeting my husband, I was a federal criminal defense investigator. So I had worked in that field where counseling was just part of what we did to cope with what we saw. Counseling was not foreign to me, nor was it stigmatized, nor was it a negative. It was a must-do. So when we got to the point in our marriage where we hit an impasse emotionally, and really, honestly, psychologically, we were stuck. I told him, I need to go to counseling because I feel like I'm drowning. We need to go to counseling because I feel like our marriage is not doing well. And was flabbergasted with his response of, pastors don't go to counseling. So I just didn't understand that. In the throes of everything that was going on, I had already started. I was finishing my master's and getting ready to go into my doctorate. And my professors kept stressing, you need to find the gap. You need to find the gap. So I was doing all this research, but I kept coming back to how could we be struggling in our marriage as pastors, yet we're offering pastoral marriage counseling. Those two things just didn't even fit on the same plate.
Sure.
So when I started to do the research, I realized there was really no information on that. And when I went back to him and I asked him, what's the Church of God's stance on counseling? He couldn't give me anything.
Yeah.
So I started researching. I got a hold of the Dixon Pentecostal Research Center, and there were crickets. The lady messaged me back, and she said, I've been through all the archives. We have no information on mental health.
Wow.
And I thought, so of course we had no resource.
And what year was this?
This would have been 2018. Okay. 2018, 2019. Okay. And really nothing, not even just on there was nothing on mental health at all from what she could tell. So where I landed was when I went back and I asked him, I said, honey, we need to go somewhere. Why are we not looking for someone? We didn't even have a network of counselors that we could trust.
Sure.
So then a little bit more research showed that there are specific counseling points that you want to look at when counseling pastors, because it's kind of just its own organism. So it's not just your normal counseling. There's there's counseling for pastors, which
Absolutely.
looks different.
It is very different.
We were very blessed to have a Christian counseling center in our city.
Good.
And the gentleman's job was to counsel specifically pastors. However, he had attended the church. So when my husband found out that it was Dr. Evans, whom I love, Dennis was like, I'm definitely not going to him because he knows me.
It's
so
too
now
connected. Right.
It was too connected, and I thought, well, there's nowhere else to go.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how we ended up. When I picked the topic, I kept going back to the incongruence of how can you offer counseling but lack the mental health literacy that is involved in counseling to know that you need counseling. Those things were not matching up. So that's how I ended up by looking at the research topic was what are the mental health practices of Church of God pastors in mental health referrals, because what I had wanted was a mental health referral. Find me someone that can help me right now. I need a specialist in this field because we're dying.
Yeah.
That's how we ended up here.
Wow. And that was hard to find.
Yeah, we like I said, we were very, very, very blessed that we had one person in probably about 100-mile region that could address what we were going through.
Okay. And so that led you to write a dissertation for your doctoral program on mental health in Church of God, right?
Yes.
Share with us about that. Kind of give us the basis of that, and what are some of the things that you found? Because I'm really interested to find out some of the results that you found out through this work.
I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump ahead. You know,
Okay.
you created the questions. I did a focus group, and then I did individual interviews.
Okay.
What I was not prepared for was the role of the pastor's wife in the scheme of counseling. I didn't have a question for that. I didn't have any research for it because that also doesn't exist. So when I was qualitative. So when I was going back through and doing the word mining, I kept seeing spouse, but there was no real role for the spouse. It was designed, it was situational. So depending on where she was going and what she was doing and how she was blending, that's how she was used. However, if the marriage was struggling, then the spouse connection in the counseling session would suffer.
Yeah.
Because
Wow.
the husband isn't going to pay attention to a wife that he doesn't like.
Absolutely.
And a wife that doesn't like her husband doesn't really want to be there.
Sure.
So the person that's suffering is the person that came in for the counseling. That was what I discovered at the end. So one of my recommendations at the end of the study was we need to go back and figure out, where does the pastor's wife fit in here? And who decides what she does? Because there is no manual at all. And where is her mental health and her emotional health in the string of everything that's being tasked for the pastoral couple? She's seen, but yet she's invisible.
Yeah.
But she's needed, but yet she's not given the credit that she's due for the work that she puts in. So at the end of that was one of the areas that came out. The other thing that I found extremely interesting was the pastoral reports that pastors have to submit at the end of the month. So we get to this pastoral report, and it says counseling hours. So I'm asking, what did you counsel on? And he's like, well, they stopped me in the parking lot, but I don't count that. Yeah, but did you give advice?
That's
I did.
counseling.
So why did you not count it?
Yeah.
Well, because I'm not a counselor, but you counsel.
Right.
So did you count it? Well, no. I only count it if they come and sit across the office from me. Well, they stopped you in the foyer, and you had a 25-minute conversation in the foyer. What did you talk about? Well, my husband's addicted to pornography. Okay, well, that was counseling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there was no rhyme or reason. So when I went back and I looked at the reports, I thought, okay, so the Church of God has phenomenal numbers on counseling hours, but there's no organization to who, when, how long, for what, what's the follow-up. So I thought, if we're training pastors and then releasing them into the field, how do I know what to train them on if no one's tracking what they're speaking about? So that was something that when I asked the pastors, they told me no one really said. We just track. And everyone had so I had over 20 people that I interviewed. There were 20 different ways of reporting those numbers, and none of them matched.
Oh, wow.
So I don't know what is being reported.
Yeah.
So I think for me the biggest thing is organizing, at least putting it into categories and saying this was marital counseling, this was emotional counseling, this is an actual mental health, there's some bipolar, schizophrenia, whatever. So we can create a mental health literacy program for our pastors to better prepare them to release them into the field. I think we do them an injustice, a gross injustice, by just releasing them and teaching them ministry and leaving out the component of ministry that is counseling.
Absolutely. And if you can't recognize it, if you're talking to people, like you said, whether it be drug addiction, whether it be depression, there's a lot of counseling that goes on there that pastors don't even realize they're doing, quite frankly, or don't recognize it. Wow. So let's get into the work now. What are some of the results that you found out?
I think the biggest thing right now is the lack of mental health literacy. What I'm finding when I speak to pastors or pastors' wives is that they've already hit burnout, and they're just in burnout, but they don't know they're in burnout.
Sure.
By the time we come in to that, now I'm trying to balance personality. My big thing is balancing personality profiles with spiritual gifts and then the church that you're at. So I always tell people, I need you to know and embrace and understand your natural God-given wiring. That's one thing, right? Then your environment shapes that wiring. So they either nurtured it or they didn't. Yeah. So now the example I give is, if you're evangelism, if that's your gifting, you're an extrovert, you'd almost have to be an evangelist, but your mom was an introvert or your dad was an introvert. So every time you spoke, they'd say, stop talking. You're talking too much, stop talking. So now you have someone who's naturally wired to speak, who was told that speaking was bad. So they adult now, and they've called into the ministry, and they're in conflict because this is what I want to do, but I was told that I talk too much.
That's wrong.
It's wrong. So now I'm having to balance this. So I need you to understand, If this is how God wired, the Word says, I knit you perfectly together in your mother's womb. So this is your natural wiring, but your environment shaped who you are. So if there's trauma, if there's disappointment, if there's hurt, and you don't acknowledge it for what it is, you will stay in the dysfunctional state and you'll never mushroom and become the person God called you to be.
Wow.
So my goal, my job, and my ministry is to walk people through, figure out who you were called to be, figure out who you've become, and merge those and be okay with not being okay.
Wow. The incongruency of your calling that God has for you and who you are.
Right.
And being able to kind of merge that together in a way that's so beautiful. That's so... I'm amazed.
Well, that is kind of the question. What's next, Giovy? What do you feel like you want to do now that you've dug into this and this is you've investigated this? I want to say thank you as a longtime member of the Church of God.
Absolutely.
To look specifically at our needs for our pastors. What do you think is next? Do you see workshops? Do you need to see another publication of another book? What?
You know, I'm going to use Dr. Fred Garman. When he first started doing what he was doing with Leader Labs, he went through Indiana. Dr. Gosnell was our overseer at the time, and Dr. Gosnell really promoted understanding your leadership traits. You have to understand them because you're leading from leadership.
Yeah.
So whether your leadership is great or not, he really hit on blind spots. You have to know your blind spots. Everybody else sees your blind spot, but you don't see your blind spot. So I remember Dr. Garman talking about that, and we took a test, an assessment, and I tested, and when the assessment came back, I was like in the 2%, and I don't even remember how it broke down because I was floored that the way that I walked into a room set the stage. Well, I'm military. I was a cop. So I'm going to walk in. I'm dealing with pedophiles and murders and rapists. I'm walking. I'm walking in like this.
Yeah.
So that can be off-putting, but that wasn't my intention. So understanding how people saw me was critical to how I delivered.
Yeah.
Because I can be extremely powerful, but a powerful bull in a china shop is destructive.
Yeah.
So I had to meter my power with the room, right? So the way I see this is if you are called to the ministry and you're bleeding and you don't know you're bleeding, you will bleed on everything and everyone around you.
Absolutely.
So this is a matter of bringing a space where we can have safe conversation, which is with Dr. Garman. Let's just have safe conversation.
Absolutely.
Let's just talk about this.
Yeah.
Figure out who you are, and then once you've highlighted those areas that we need to work on, let's work on them. And it's okay. And this is what I tell people all the time. It's okay not to be okay.
Absolutely.
Be okay with not being okay. So for me, my dream is to be able to reach those that have been pastoring for years that are just on fumes now. And we need to rescue, because if they're mentoring the new ones coming in, their dysfunction is basically being handed to the next generation.
Absolutely.
So it's just equally as important for us to train the new ones coming in than it is for us to heal the ones that are already there, because that's who's doing the mentoring.
Yeah.
So what are we going to mimic? What you told me to do.
It needs to be talked about, and it needs to be, I'd say, normalized.
Well, also labeled properly, right?
Absolutely.
And agreed upon terminology, right? To help us so that we can communicate to not only ourselves but to others, and so that we can get the help that we need, all right?
Yes.
And so it sounds like some psychoeducation that needs to take place.
Yeah, my heart is in mental health literacy. It is labeling that. It's understanding mild depression is different than chronic depression.
Absolutely.
So when somebody comes, when I lost my mom, I lost my mom as a result of COVID. It rocked my world. I teach this, I live this, I breathe this. And I remember I put markers, and I knew if I don't shower for more than 3 days, there's a problem. If I haven't combed my hair for more than 2 days. So I could clean up on Wednesday because we have church, and I could clean up on Sunday because we had church.
Right.
But between Sunday and Wednesday and Sunday, I was a mess. So I reached out to certain people, and I said, these are my markers. If you see me in this place, I need you to hold me accountable because I may not be able to carry myself. But I knew what I was looking for. Other people don't know that, and they function in that dysfunction, and they think it. And then you function in dysfunction long enough, and it becomes normal.
It becomes part of you.
Yeah.
And I love what you said. It's okay to not be okay. Depression, sadness, these are emotions God has given to us for a reason.
Right.
Right? And when you're dealing with burnout, your body tells you. And unfortunately, what I've seen in ministry, you know this perfectly too well, is they ignore what the signs that the body is telling them, and they just try to push through, and typically doesn't go well, does it?
Right.
And so, wow. Tell us a little bit about your book, because I'm getting a copy of this, quite frankly, and how can we get it?
So the navigating, so they're available. Pathway Press has them, and then you can also get these on Amazon. But what I did was there were 7 pillars that came out from the interviews, and part of that had to do with understanding what the cry for help looks like.
Okay.
It will walk a pastor through. Counseling is not an if it happens, it's a when it happens. However you want to label it, whether you're giving advice, whether you're supporting a brother or sister, there's still some form of counseling that's happening. What I discovered during the research is that there were not a lot of boundaries put in place. So some pastors will give it all and they keep burning out, and this person really has no desire to get better.
Yeah.
They just want you to walk them through. They don't want to put in the work. Also, especially from a charismatic Pentecostal background, depending on where you're from in the region, demonic mentality takes over. So now, is it deliverance or is it mental health? Is this a demon or is this just,
Yes.
I have really bad PMS and I don't know where to go with this,
Right.
but I think my wife's a Jezebel. So really learning to decipher what is what, but that's a mental health literacy issue. Understanding if it was stigmatized within your family, you will carry that over into the pulpit. So if we never spoke about mental health at home, you'll never speak about it from the
True.
pulpit. So it's really understanding, walking, and allowing pastors to have a framework, which is what was missing. The framework of when I hit this and I realize this may be too much for me, I'm going to go ahead and make the mental health referral. The number one thing that I tell pastors is our role primarily is pastor, secondarily is counselor. If Jeff comes in and he says, hey, I want to talk to you about something, and I think you're going to cross into an area that may affect our relationship as sheep and shepherd, I will refer you, because people will overshare. They feel like they've overshared. Right. So as a preacher now, I'm preaching on a topic on Sunday, and you think that I'm preaching about you, when it has nothing to do with you. It just so happens that was the topic of conversation. So you really have to know the maturity level of your congregation and what they can and can't handle. So it's not an issue of can I not counsel you through this, is if I counsel you through this, will it impact our relationship between congregant and pastor, sheep or shepherd? And if it does, then I'm going to pass you on to a professional that does this to relieve and preserve our relationship.
Absolutely.
I'll walk alongside you, but I don't want to risk losing you over that. So that's really what this is. So I called it Navigating the Maze of Mental Health in Ministry, because it is very maze-like for some people that have never, and I believe that there are pastors and people in ministry right now that are struggling with mental health and don't know it.
True.
They just think it's part of it because they've been in it for so long.
Absolutely. They can't think of any other way than what they've been living for the past however many years.
Right.
Wow. And this book, to be clear, you wrote this book off of your dissertation, which is specifically designed through Church of God ministers.
Yes, I only interviewed Church of God ministers. Now, the framework, the 7 stages are pastoral role in congregants' mental health care, pastors in the mental health support team, identifying the mental health support request. That's a big one, especially in altar calls. Yeah. You'll have someone utter something during a prayer, and it's actually a cry for mental health, and we miss it because in the moment we're anointing with oil and we're laying hands and we're missing the cues. This is what they actually said. I don't think I should be here anymore. Well, that's a suicide ideational thought that just came out of that person. But we're like, no, the Holy Spirit will strengthen you. He will, but I need you to focus on the fact that they said they didn't want to live.
Right.
Number 4, the role of clergy in facilitating mental health referrals, the impact of pastoral mental health literacy on referrals, and then the impact of pastoral perceived origin. So that's what I was talking about with Pentecostal backgrounds. And then the impact of the well-being of the pastor. So if I'm already burned out and someone comes to me, I don't have it in me to give it. That's the number one reason why you should be conducting the referral. Yeah. But what I also found out in the research is pastors do not have a network developed. So when it's time to extend the referral, they don't even know who to send them to.
They're clueless.
Right. So there's a section in here that talks about vetting the counselors and figuring out, especially with a lot of counselors not ascribing to a specific denomination, or if they don't believe in God or whatever it is, if I release you to them, I want you to know that they're going to say they hear from the Holy Spirit. What is your response to that when you hear it? So it's all involving the journey of mental health.
You mentioned something earlier, that counseling pastors is just different. They're a different breed. There's a certain wiring that is different. They don't trust very easily. And so I've seen that over the years, just specifically ministering with pastors and their families. It's hard to connect with them, right? What I've noticed is they don't know whether to refer, whether to take them on. because like you said, when you are pastoring a congregant, when you counsel with them, oftentimes people are being very open,
Right.
being very transparent. That changes the dynamic of the relationship,
Yes.
right? And that's something that we see quite often, quite frankly, is where they take that on when they probably shouldn't be doing that rather than just referring it out.
And I have examples in here that talk about especially if they're big tithers.
Yeah.
Or your church is struggling financially. I remember having those conversations with other pastors where they've said, I counseled them because I couldn't afford not to.
Wow.
So there's a weird responsibility that they take on, because if I don't counsel them, they'll leave and they'll go to a church that will counsel them. Well, you have no right counsel. You're not abandoning. That's the thing. One of the participants made such a phenomenal analogy, and he said, I'm a veterinarian. You're a veterinarian, you're a veterinarian, you're a veterinarian. But I specialize in exotic animals. You specialize in large animals. So you're a horse veterinarian. I deal with kitty cats and little things, right? So if somebody brings me a horse, I have the title of veterinarian, but that's not my specialty.
Right.
So if you want your horse to live and I want your horse to live, I'm sending him to that vet, because at the end of the day, I'm a shepherd.
Yeah.
I'm not a veterinarian.
Yeah.
So the veterinarian will take care of the medical stuff. I will make sure that you're getting to the appointments and do the follow-up. And that was the best example that they could give. So I think collectively, if we could get to the point where we understand, you hear the people say, stay in your lane. It's not so much a stay in your lane. It's understand when you're in your lane, what is your role when you're in here.
Right.
So if somebody comes in and exceeds that, you can properly hand them off, but stay along in the journey.
Absolutely. And taking on responsibility, what you need to take on, and not taking on everyone else's that
Right.
you don't need to.
Right.
So, Dr. Giovy, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you for so much. Where can we get your book again?
Pathway Press has them, and then you can get them on Amazon.com.
Awesome.
Thank you again.
You're welcome.
Pleasure to meet you.
Absolutely.
Thank you for your work.
Thank you.
Well, this has been another episode of Pastoring on Purpose here in Orlando, and we will see you next time. And until then, God bless.